Coral
Florida.
Springs, man. And how long have you lived there? Quite some time.
Oh yeah, decades.
Really, you like it that much?
Yeah, very much so.
But I saw where you had kind of moved from Germany as well. Is that did you move? Is German weather? I've never been to
Oh
Europe
no,
before.
that was just a year-long stint. That was my last assignment in corporate. And so I
Wow.
went over there, and that was kind of the trigger for me becoming an independent.
Yeah, yeah, that's too cool, man. Let me tell everyone real quick who's with me today. After 18 years in corporate HR leadership, Scott Trumpolt made a bold leap, leaving Germany to launch his own compensation consulting firm in the U.S. In this episode, he shares how aligning pay with purpose can transform both organization and lives. Man, I'm excited to learn more about you and just kind of pick. I do some business coaching and I
Mhm.
work. I work alongside of folks that every day I'm like, you probably need an expert that's beyond me. So I'm just glad I got to connect with you to kind of put the Scott Trumpolt in my tool belt of people that I can say, hey, this is a guy you need to call for this or what have you as those
Yeah.
situations arise. Because just reading about you and learning more about you myself and for folks that are just tuning in with us, this is the first time I get to talk to Scott, and so you're gonna get to talk to alongside with us. We're live, so if you have questions, you can post them in the chat, and we'll see those and we can get to those. But man, tell me, kick me off with like what's a day in your life look like?
Well, a day in my life as a independent consultant is my expertise is in, to boil it really down, it's to help companies figure out pay strategies, how to pay employees based on their jobs, typically linked to the external marketplace. What's the best way to manage the pay for the individual for the job that they do within the organization? And from there, how do you attract them? How do you retain them? And how do you motivate them? Most importantly, this whole aspect of employee engagement. So, my area of compensation is part of human resources. And what I've been doing really for the past 13 years is working as an independent, working with companies of all different sizes, can be startup organizations or large, well established corporate firms to help in this area of pay, which is really in the shadows. It's in kind of a black box. And one of the reasons that I got into being an independent was I kind of wanted to bring it out of the black box, at least for the people that I was working for, and to explain the logic behind it and how best to position themselves for this idea of employee engagement through pay. There are a lot of ways to engage employees, okay?
Yeah.
It just so happens that my area really has to do with employee compensation. So, how do we pay people appropriately? And most importantly, how do we grow them over time? So, my day's work is really working with a host of different clients on a variety of projects in the area of paying their employees and linking it to employee engagement. So that's what I do.
What's how did you where how did you get started in that?
Well, it was quite some time ago now, but after I got my master's degree in human resources management, I was working in another capacity at that time within a company, and they decided to take a chance on me. I wanted to switch careers. Again, this is some years ago. And they brought me in, and I was so fortunate because I worked under two different gentlemen who were really like, not only did they become colleagues, but they were really mentors to me. And they tried me out in different aspects of human resources, different areas, like whether it was recruiting or being a generalist or in the benefits area. But they saw I had an aptitude and an interest in the area of compensation. And so they just brought me along, and I did that for about 4 years. And then at that time, I decided to move on and to continue in that vein in compensation. And for about 18 years in total, I then worked in the corporate environment doing segments of what I do now. I say segments because in the corporate world, I wasn't involved in the whole picture. I was involved in bits and pieces of the picture. But when I got out on my own, it was time to take all those different pieces and pull them together to create total solutions for my clients, because my clients are just dealing with me. So I have to have all that experience and background in different parts of the compensation, employee compensation equation, and then bring it together into a singular solution.
So it's like one of those, if when someone, obviously when someone's trying to figure out the pay, but how does it get to that level? If someone's starting a company, Scott, and they're like, we need to hire a marketer or we need to hire an engineer. Is that kind of what we're talking? And you just kind of come alongside and look at the scope of the job, or how does that kind of evolve for you?
Yeah, well, the first thing you need to do as a consultant is really be a good listener and to be a good researcher and to find out as much as you can from the people. Like you say, if they're starting out, they're new to the organization, they're new to building up this organization. That's like a whole different animal as opposed to an established corporation. So you really need to start by asking a lot of questions before you even get to the point of looking at how much this job pays in the marketplace, because there are so many different aspects. So I might say to them, okay, you're new, new company. Who do you want to compare yourselves against? What do you think is going to be your compensation philosophy? Do you want to pay right at what the market's paying, or do you want to attract top talent and you want to attract people quickly? Do you want to pay more than market? Do you want to pay less on base pay, but you want to pay more on variable pay? You really want to be a pay for results organization. So the bottom line is that I'm asking a lot of questions to get an idea. Again, you kind of posed it as a startup, a small company just getting started. Where do they want to be? Where are they now? And where do they want to be 5, 10 years from now? They may not have it all figured out, but I can get enough information from them so that when I go out and I market price that job, then I've got some ammunition to, I've asked the right questions and I can find out what are the comparable market benchmarks out there that I want to compare this job against. So as you said, an engineer, I'm going to find out, okay, are you looking to hire an entry-level engineer? Or are you looking to hire a senior engineer? Are you looking to hire an expert? All of these different things. And as I said, do you want to compare yourself just to what engineers are making in a small company? Do you want to only look at a certain industry, maybe the same industry as you're in or want to be in? Do you want to just look at startups? All of these questions have to be asked so that I can make the most precise judgment on what they should be paying competitively for this job within their organization, within their work culture. All of this comes into play. So in the area of compensation, it's quite different than, say, accounting or finance, where everything adds up nicely. You're dealing with human beings, you're dealing with their livelihoods, and you've got to consider all these different factors. And you've also got to consider, when you hire the right candidate, what their background is and where they're going to fit today, but also where they're going to fit down the road. Are you going to be able to grow? Does this job have potential, or are you bringing in someone that's really well qualified for that exact job, but may not have, they might already be reaching the ceiling? So do you want to grow people internally, or do you just want the top experts to come in? So all these different factors come into play.
How, and this is because you got my brain working, because I've heard of pay studies, right? I worked in government work, and so I've heard of pay studies and all these little nuggets that come along there. But like, if I'm going to sit down and do a Google search and I'm going to find Scott Trumpolt, what am I keying in? What is that search term that I would put in to find?
Sure. If you didn't, let's just say you didn't know who Scott Trumpolt was.
Yep.
It's not a name you see every day, especially the last name. But you wouldn't want to probably just put in compensation, because then you might get workers' compensation, which is something totally different. You might get a very broad search. So you might want to say something like employee compensation. You might want to say compensation planning and design. You might want to say total rewards. These are all different words out on, for example, I did this the other day. I put in compensation planning and design, and my name came up. Okay.
Right.
I didn't put Trumpolt compensation plan because that gives it away. But say you're just someone, because some of my clients, for example, they're what I call cold clients. They, while a lot of my business is referral business from people that have worked with me over the years, they know my quality of work, they know what I can do, and they meet someone who's interested in those services, they will refer them to me. But sometimes it might be a company that just, hey, we don't have employee compensation expertise in-house. We need to have someone come in on a temporary basis and help us with these various issues. So they might type in, again, employee compensation, and they'll get different listings. And then the question becomes, do they only want to use a really big established firm, which there are some. Some names you might have heard of is Mercer or Towers Watson. These are large companies that do on a very large scale what I do. But on the other hand, those type of large companies have a lot of overhead. They have a lot of employees. So this individual may be looking for someone that's an independent that has the same skill set, but doesn't have as much overhead. They want to have a personalized and, most importantly, customized experience. So this all comes into play in terms of, first, they're looking for someone in compensation. Then they have to make a choice about, do they want to work with a large firm or an independent? And everybody has a different take on it. So with cold clients, that's the way they would typically reach me. And then when they type in those words like compensation or total rewards and they see my website, then they might go out to the website and see if this is going to be, at least on the surface, a fit for them.
Yeah. That's really cool, man. Like I said, this is the first time I've ever met someone who does what you do. So I think it's even a cooler, cool. Even those companies you mentioned, I can't say that I've ever worked around
Yeah.
them. Like I said, in government work, we would do these, but then you shed a lot of light on. You always kind of, because I've never really thought about like how do we value what we do, and how do we who puts a price on that, or how do we come up with that? So it's really interesting to me to like, all right, I'm talking to the guy that helps kind of craft that plan.
Well, Jeff, the thing is this is not surprising to me at all, because as I mentioned at the very beginning, compensation is very personal and
Yeah.
it's kept in the shadows, not not really meant to be secretive, but the idea is it's not something that uh, employees. Now the thing is it's changing, because now we have certain states in the United States that are passing laws, which we could have a whole conversation on. We don't have time for that now, but about pay transparency, where employers have to list the pay ranges for the jobs out there, for all the jobs in their organization, not names, of course, of individuals in those jobs, but what jobs pay and the ranges for those jobs. So my job is changing a little bit more with these laws, because with pay transparency laws, this invites more questions. But historically, the fact that you haven't met someone previously who does what I do, there are many of us. But the reason that I got into doing my own thing, being an independent consultant, is it very much was a niche. I had this experience, and I knew that companies out there, regardless of the type of company they are or the size of the company, they need support in those areas. So that's trying to make myself more visible and to make myself transparent, while the industry is becoming more transparent as well.
What is the, I understand kind of that I've seen that paid bandwidth, but
Right.
what is the push to make that more transparent? Because like growing up, you just didn't ask someone their salary. Government work, it's public record. You can go
Right.
and pull, you can go and
Right.
see that. But in the private sector, it's pretty much, it was a no, like you just didn't ask people what they made. It was kept secret, all those things. What is generating, or what's kind of the push behind the transparency with private salaries?
The move, as best I can tell, which has slowly been taking steam over the past decade, is the newer generations coming up. They want to have more transparency, not only to the pay range of their current job, but also for other jobs in the organization. But here's the key thing that's going on, Jeff. When I say they're sharing ranges, it's kind of a dead end because all they're doing is they're saying, okay, this job in our organization pays from the minimum here of 80,000 and the maximum is 140,000. Okay. But it's a dead end in the sense that it's just a couple of numbers on a range, and someone, based upon their qualifications and their experience, could be paid differently within that range based on a number of factors. So I think what's really going on when I say the newer generations coming up is not so much they want to know what individuals are making, specific individuals in job. It's more linked to career development. And
Okay.
that's how I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it is they see posting of ranges as a starting point to learn more. Okay, I found out what the range of this job is, and they're telling me I'm going to be making $85,000 a year. And that's only a little bit into the range. Now, how can I get further into that range? And so that's where the career development piece comes into play. So, what I'm advocating and what I'm working towards is having companies get more transparent with what's the next step for these employees. What does the career development path look like? Because as you grow your career, you grow your pay, and that's what people are interested in.
That's a really, I'm glad you explained that, because I was a little standoffish thinking about it until you put it that way. Because here's the way it gets summed up a lot of times in the small business and private world is you're paid based on the problems you solve, or you're
Mhm.
compensated based on the problem you solve. And the way you just phrased that and framed that to me helps me find clarity within that conversation of you get paid for the problems you solve. This is what
Mhm.
your development's got to look like as you go through this scale. And right now you're solving this set, but we're going to develop you so you can be able to take on these roles as well.
Yeah.
So that totally makes sense to me the way you put that, and it helps. I could really see the value in the way you explain that versus, you get paid for done, you get paid for the problems you solve. If you want to make more money, you got to solve more problems. That's Those words come out all the time, and we hear those, and I hear people use it, and I'll hear, folks like, hey, if you want to get better at your job, you need to start solving bigger problems for your employer. But they
Right.
don't really lay out that map, Scott. They don't, that like what you're talking about. It seems like there's a little more of a map, maybe.
Well, there is. And keep in mind that there's another opportunity here. That opportunity with pay transparency is that it's going to strengthen the relationship between the employee and their immediate manager, because the employee is naturally going to go to their immediate manager. That's someone they know, they work for, and they're going to be looking for guidance from that manager. And the manager needs to phrase it. The manager doesn't need to be an expert in compensation. They can be advised and they can be provided tools by human resources to answer those kind of questions. But the most important thing that the manager can do is the manager needs to say, hey, this is the business need. This is what our business needs. This is how our business needs you to grow to support that business need. Right now, and you kind of alluded to this, right now we've got you working on this, but we need to have you develop skills in these other areas, because a couple of years down the road, our business need is going to change and you're going to need to have those skills. So when the employee and the manager are talking, this is strengthening the bond between the employee and the manager. We've seen it over and over again when they run employee opinion surveys. And the big thing that comes out of it is they often receive their engagement, or they reduce their engagement levels based upon the relationship with their immediate manager. It's not the head of the company. It's certainly not human resources. Human resources has a role to play, but oftentimes employees view human resources as someone that focuses on, compliance and performance management, hiring and firing, and they're not going to be as comfortable going into their direct manager. So this is the great thing. This is the opportunity. Younger generations want pay transparency, and if we manage it right, we can lead that into a much healthier discussion about career development. And again, I've said it a couple of times now, but I'll say it again. Career development is the key to growing your pay, because that's what you want. Ultimately, you want to get paid more money.
Yeah.
Well, yes, and your employee engagement levels are going to be stronger if you feel like your career is developing. It's not become stagnant. It's not flat. You're moving forward. So that's where the manager can fit into it. The manager can say, this is what the business need is, and we got to work towards the business need. If we both do our jobs at this, we're both going to benefit.
Do you encourage to have the whole plan mapped out, or can you have that? Can we have that like 2 phases ahead? Like, hey, right here's where you are. Boom, right here's 2 phases ahead, and it allows you, the employer, time to kind of build out the rest of it. Or is
Yeah.
this something you feel like needs to be done all at once?
No, it can't really be, because business needs change. What you can do is, when someone gets paid in an organization, we don't just say they're an accountant, for example, for the company. We say to them, you are classified as an intermediate level accountant. What we can say to them, we're not going to have it all mapped out to answer your question, but what we can say to them, like during their annual performance review, most companies have annual performance reviews. The employee comes in, they discuss their performance, and then they say, we're going to be giving you a 3% or a 4% pay increase based upon your performance. That is an ideal opportunity culturally, the work culture I'm talking about, the work culture, to say, okay, you're doing a really good job as an intermediate level accountant. But if you want to continue to grow your pay, the next level for you that we need you to be at is a senior level accountant. And here are the requirements for being a senior level accountant. That the manager can be armed with that kind of information to get them to the next step. You can also have that same discussion with an employee. Do you want to become a people leader, or do you want to stay on an individual contributor career path? And what does that look like? Because ultimately, at some point, the two levels line up together. You can grow as a manager of people, or you can grow as a individual contributor to higher and higher levels. So I think what we can do is we can have the manager map out the next step in that development. And when we talk about business need, this may also be an opportunity for the manager to say, hey, you're going to need to obtain these skills, but you're not going to be able to do it in your current job. We're going to need to have you move laterally over to this department to gain these skills. So that can be part of the equation too. But it all comes back to the idea of growing the employee so we can grow their pay.
You said that's kind of the way it happens in the government sector. Is you may be moved around from here to here to kind of grow your expertise and just kind of get more tools in your tool belt. What I was going to ask, I got two things kind of come to mind. I'm curious. The first one was, we talk about compensation. We talk a lot about money. But
Right.
do you help? Does it always? I was kind of coaching a business owner the other day, and they were they're strapped for cash, right? Just kind of getting everything retooled, and they
Yeah.
had growth, and they're headed in the right direction. They're like, we want to make sure that we're taking care of our team, and they were talking about raises, this and another. I'm like, well, where are they going to come from? And so the conversation started down the non-monetary tools that you can employ. Do you help business owners craft any like non-monetary vacation time, all the other stuff that comes into a package? Do you help craft that as well?
I have in the past, particularly in the area of employee recognition. I'm also I'm a certified compensation professional. That's a series of exams that you take, and then you apply that in your career. But also previously, I had the idea of employee recognition is very important for employee engagement, and I'm also certified in that. And the idea of having a program that is not financially based in terms of rewards, but recognition for the job that people do. I think companies are okay at giving employees a pat on the back when they got to the end of the project, but sometimes not so much in the interim when they're working towards a goal. I think there needs to be more regular reinforcement, more regular recognition, and there are programs you can develop. But as a consultant now in compensation, I'm very specialized. I really focus on anything compensation related, whether it's sales commissions, bonuses, base pay. There are people that focus just on the non financial areas, but that's my specialization. And believe me, that keeps me busy.
Yeah, I bet. The other
Yeah.
thing I was going to ask you is we talk a lot about pay raise. Do you ever work alongside business owners that they have to potentially decrease pay? They have to restructure. Have you ever been in a situation where they have to go in and where they have to restructure the pay? Maybe some folks are making less money than what they were before. Have you ever ran into that?
Well, ran into it a lot in my corporate career.
Mm,
Not so much as an independent consultant. Most of the work that I do is about growth. That's why they're bringing in me in the first place. It's
got it.
really more about growth. And so, however, companies are very careful about that in terms of reducing someone's pay. That is not really top of their minds. Oftentimes, it might be that their job gets restructured and it's not to the company. It doesn't require the same skill set, and they may
Yep.
be offered that role. But in terms of actually taking money away from them, that doesn't happen as much as you might think.
Right, right. Yeah. That's why I was asking, because we always talk about the upside, right? The upward mobility and the growth,
Yeah,
and that comes up sometimes, and about like especially someone who's bought a company and they didn't do their due diligence, and they're getting to be cash strapped, and they're having to
yeah.
restructure. And like you mentioned, there was is being able to just redefine roles. Um, that's a sticking point for just small business. Tell me this. You had this turning point though. We talked about your corporate world. You had
Mhm.
this turning point where you're like, I'm going to stake out. I'm going out on my own. I'm done working for the man, so to say. But
Yeah.
what did that look like for you? What was that turning point?
That really was a turning point. My last stop in corporate was I was given an opportunity to go over to the head office in Germany. So, of course, I had always been based in the US. And it was to join a group of individuals in a center. They called it the Center of Excellence. And what we did was it was in a way sort of a think tank, kind of, but more practical in terms of we were doing day-to-day application. But the idea was that this was a very large organization, global organization. Try and work out solutions that would work across different countries, different work cultures, uh, different divisions, business units within the same larger company. Because, how do companies become so large? They take other divisions, that might have different work cultures, different business units, and bring them all together. And what I found is that as the years had gone by in corporate, I was doing less and less of the hands-on work and getting more and more segmented and more incremental in the pieces of a project that I was working on. And I actually felt like my skills were deteriorating a little bit. The higher up I went, I was getting paid more, but things were getting very segmented. And at a certain point, we talked about employee engagement earlier. You need to be engaged as an individual. And I found that I was losing my passion, and I did not want that to continue. So for only about a year after doing this, I said, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing bits and pieces. I want to do all of it. And I want to concentrate myself on being the best individual contributor I could be. So it was a turning point in the sense that I decided that I really wanted to strike out on my own. I felt that there was a business need out there. And the most important thing is I wanted to feel that passion again and not be just a small piece of a much larger group where I couldn't have as much influence and impact. So
I was going to ask you what was that? Where did you lose your,
it was there.
yeah, when I coach you on that, I always like, people you don't forget your passion. Either you work for a crappy boss sometimes, right? And that happens. A poor leadership can lead to burnout.
Yeah.
And you forget your why you show up every day. I was going to ask you that, like, really what created that moment for you. But it sounds like you're that small voice inside the big company, and you wanted to amplify that.
Yeah, it wasn't about I worked with excellent people. It wasn't about my boss. It wasn't about pay. It was just the feeling that, hey, I spend a lot of time doing this and I can be happier doing this on my own. So that part of it was simple. I really hadn't given it a lot of thought before, but after a year or so of doing this, I just felt like I'm ready. I got pushed into it.
Yeah.
I didn't have this grand plan. It's just that I know I can be happier. And now I've got the tools to do it. I couldn't have done it 10 years earlier because I didn't have the tools. And it wouldn't have mattered back then because I still had my passion for what I was doing. But now with that removed from the puzzle, those two pieces came together.
That so similar with you. My last W-2 worked for 10 years. Before that, I worked for about 15 to 20 inside of public safety, and and 10 years directly in law enforcement. And I was kind of getting this nag I need to learn, and then life kind of changed that for me. My last W-2 was about year 8.5. I started getting this, just like, you go do something on your own. And what you just said, Scott, was exactly where I was. I didn't have the skill set, and I'm very fortunate for the folks I got to work for and with and build company and do all the things that I did, and so much gratitude for everything that they taught me. But I started getting this itch of where I just wanted to go I just wanted to go do me, and I wanted to create my time and just kind of do it on my own. And the owner that I worked for, I was like, I made good money, and he just could not fathom why I wanted to go. And I was like, I want to go. I'm looking for freedom, right? Or I want to go do this. I just want to go chase my own thing. And dude, I totally understand what you're saying. And I wanted to pause there for a second because, not all second chances, folks, comes from, you're on a second chance podcast, but we focus on business as well. And not all of our second chances is by way of some trauma or whatever. It's about this guy who's worked in corporate world. And he wants to go and chase his own dream and make his own money and carry his own water. And, man, that's a really, really cool part of your story, dude. And I just wanted to point that out to you. That takes a lot of courage to come out of that comfort zone and to set out on your own. Like, I'm gonna make this work, and to build something and can go and compete against those big conglomerates that you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. I didn't view it at the time as courageous although it was more like I need to be happy.
Yeah.
And I do listen to myself. And when something like that comes up, I know that, that's the kind of nudge that I needed. But everybody's
I
different. Everybody has a different story to tell. That's why your podcast is so important, because you can share these kind of stories. Why people, there are a lot of different reasons why they might go the independent route. And then when you are in the independent route, I can guarantee you, you're going to go through growing pains
yeah.
of one type or another. I certainly did. It's a transition just to realize, and scary at first, talk about getting out of your comfort zone, but realizing everything's up to you, including where your next paycheck is going to be coming from. Being able to do all of the things for a company, not just what you love to do, but invoicing, marketing your business, things that you may not have had direct experience with. But again, I have to say, if you have the passion for what you do, you will learn the other pieces good enough to make it work. Because the only way I was going to be able to sustain my business and my passion was to do these things, learn how to do these things, because I hadn't had to do them in my prior. There was always somebody else doing those, someone else taking care of my paycheck, someone else making sure that I've signed up for my health insurance. I've got a
Yeah.
wife. It's not just about me. Making sure that all of these things get done so that I can continue to do what I want to do.
I call it the magic stuff. Things that happen. Like I was the same way. Cause I was
Yeah,
like, everything. I was like, when you work for when I work for the county insurance, you get your paycheck is direct deposited. Everything that needs to be took out of it, retirement insurance, all that stuff
right.
is automatically deducted. You know to the penny what you're going to make from year to year. If you get a 3% raise or if they restructure your pay, you know what that dollar amount's going to be. You can either
Yeah.
maximize, change your retirement around. And then when I went into the private sector, I got a paper check and had to take it to the bank to get it cashed. And I was like, all right, what happens to this now? All right, what do I need to do with that? But here's what I'll tell you, folks: don't let that scare you, because there's plenty of people out here like myself or Scott that want to help you navigate this.
Mhm.
Um, there's so many people that can help you navigate the unknown so you can focus on what you're good at, especially if you're making money in your business. You can outsource all sorts of things that you can do there. What I was going to ask you too, before we get too far ahead, um, is I wanted to know like those mistakes that you're seeing, that like the common mistakes that companies make when they're structuring pay, and the point in time when you're like, I wish you'd have called me first. Is there some common things that you see, Scott, that you're able to really, that you can tell folks like, hey, these are some common things I'm seeing, this is what you should probably be in touch with me type thing.
Yeah, one of the big ones that I see for larger companies is they're not always paying for what the job is valued at. They're
Mm,
paying the individual. And what I mean by that is, time and time again, I'll see an organization say, I've got an opening here for a manager, and you're saying it pays $95,000 a year, but I don't think your range is right. I don't think the market value is correct, because I've got all these different candidates coming in and I can't hire any of them. It's for this money. It's not enough money. And then you start to take a look at the resumes of the individuals, and what you find happening is that these people have been directors, senior directors. They're at higher levels, and now for whatever reason, maybe they just need a job, but they are going after a job that's a manager level. And so they're overpaying, or they're looking at candidates that may be overqualified for the actual job that is being advertised for. there have been times when someone might come and say to me, I've lost 3 employees in the past year and a half. They've been here, and I start asking questions like, how long have they been with you? Oh, they've been with us for 4 years. Good performers? Oh, yeah, really good performers. And they're making what? They're making in the low 80s. And then I ask them what they're leaving for, and they say about $90,000. And I said, guess what? That's the midpoint of our range. That's what they're supposed to be getting paid. But for whatever reason, their pay has not grown with the range. So our ranges are dead on perfect. We're just not paying them based on the fact that they're a great performer and they've been with the company for several years. So it's a flight risk that wasn't addressed proactively. And again, that's where compensation can help. A lot of companies also, especially in the startup mode, they will make a lot of decisions on a lot of different employees, hiring new employees that make sense for the individual job hire. But then when they look at them 6 months later in aggregate, they haven't thought about it in terms of the full structure and the process. They made what made sense at the time to hire this one individual, but it could be as simple as then they bring in another individual who had less experience. So they're going to put them in the same job, but for whatever reason, they ended up paying them more than the person that had more experience. So these are common things, and that's why structure is important, not to minimize. A lot of people are afraid of structure because they think it will limit what they can do. But it's more about, you can still have plenty of flexibility, but you need to have some guidelines, and you need to have some individual advising you properly so that you are aware of the ramifications. If you do this, this is what may happen down the road. So those are some of the kind of issues that I see that are prevalent, that are happening quite a bit, that could benefit from some compensation expertise.
Yeah. Tell us, as we're wrapping up here, tell us who your ideal client is. And we touched on it, but let's dial that in for our closing, and then make sure I dropped it in the comments for everyone, your website and your LinkedIn, so folks can connect with you. If you look in the chat, folks, or if you look in the comments on whatever platform you're watching this on, you're going to see Scott's links in there so we can get in touch with him. But you tell us, Scott, how would that ideal client and how we can get in touch with you.
Well, the ideal client, the nice thing is because of the type of work I do, I work across industries. I've worked with most of the major industries that you can think of, healthcare, information technology, manufacturing, aviation, all different industries. So industry is not the big thing. The key thing is to understand the corporate culture and the work culture and what the business mission is. So my type of skills are very adaptable based on the industry. But usually the ideal client for me is anywhere from somewhere in the neighborhood of a few thousand employees. I start, sometimes I'll work with companies that have just a few hundred employees, and maybe all the way up to 5,000 employees. But again, the industry and the company size is not so crucial. It's more about the need that the organization has, and if I am the best fit for that need. And so they're all ideal clients to me. I'm sorry, I can't be.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Yeah, like it's got to be. Yeah,
but the best way to reach me is LinkedIn. I have a profile page on LinkedIn. I'm also a member of the Better Business Bureau of Southeast Florida and the Caribbean. So the reason I mentioned that one is because I have a lot of client testimonials out there of my work, and maybe someone can read a testimonial just not to see what I did, but see if that might fit with what they are doing. And I have a website as well. And I think a lot of this will be referenced in the video, the YouTube, that'll be part of it. But I love to grow my client base. that's what I'm focused on now. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on your podcast today.
Yeah,
I'm really
absolutely.
appreciative of that.
HRCompensationconsulting.com is
Yeah,
Scott's website. So it'll be bookmarked, folks. This is one of those things. Two things I was going to tell you. First off, congratulations on your second chance jumping and doing your own thing, man. It's
thank you.
amazing.
Thank
A
you.
lot of courage, a lot of story inside of there that I didn't want folks to be able to overlook. 'Cause that's a big deal. Because I kind of walked on that same path like yourself too. So just taking
So
that
many of us have.
opportunity, yeah, yeah, big deal. And the other thing is just keep in mind that this has been totally 100% an educational episode for me. So I learn more about what you do and that the role that you serve and that it exists because a lot of folks don't know and
Yeah.
they're beating their head against the wall trying to figure it out. And here you are as a subject matter expert um, that now that they can lean on. So we want to make sure that if you know someone who matches what Scott was looking for from a client perspective, is making sure that you share this episode, tag Scott in them, and let's try to connect him so we can help our business friends get further down the road than they are now if they're struggling, especially. So thank you. Can't thank you enough, Scott, for being with us today. Can't hopefully we can catch back up. You can debrief some cool stories for us and some success stories that you have along the way. And I appreciate you being with us today, brother.
Thank you, Jeff. It's been my pleasure.